Good evening, everybody. It's another Saturday evening. I'm on the East Coast. Some of you all are in the Midwest. I hear it's a lot of snow there. And so I hear it's very cold. So God bless y'all. But yeah, I don't have those issues here yet. So thank God. I'll take it. I'll take it. But it is the week before Thanksgiving. I hope you all are grateful and thankful um, for life, to be alive. I think that's important. And so I'm grateful to be here. Again, I'm not here alone. You're here, and I have a very special guest. And I've been looking forward to having this conversation for a myriad of reasons for a very, very long time. Some of them you'll find out as we begin to talk. Um, this is my friend for a very, very long time now. We don't have to go into how many years.
Long, 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 long.
Little while, a little while. We've been kicking it for a little while. She is a daughter. She is an entrepreneur. She is a scholar. She is a theologian. She is a singer. She is an associate pastor. Um, what else is she? Just just a lot of things that she has accomplished. A lot of things that she's doing that we're going to talk about. She's my friend. We grew up in the same neighborhood together, so we'll talk about that in a little
Yes.
while. The one and only LaShondra Stephens.
Hello,
Hello.
everyone.
How are
Yes.
you?
I'm so blessed. I'm glad to be here. I'm honored to be here. I'm a little nervous because I don't know where you're gonna go since you know me all my life. But hey, let's do
We've been
it.
talking for a long time. It's all good. It's we just chopping it up. I'm going to resist as much as I can from calling you your nickname.
Thank you.
By
That,
default, that's just what I.
don't worry, I get that all the time.
Okay, all right.
Mhm.
I'm gonna resist as best I can. If it comes out, just please forgive me. That's all.
I mean, your family. It's okay.
um. Yeah, I don't. It's so much to talk about. I don't know where to start. So I'll start here where I usually always start. Um, if you had to tell someone your origin story, um, what does that sound like? Who are some of the important people in that for you, and where does it begin?
That's a great question. I love that question. Thank you for asking.
Hmm.
So, my origin story, I'm the daughter of two educators. Um, my mom, Evangelist Stevens, Bernita Stevens, my dad, Coach Aaron Stevens, they were both educators for Chicago Public Schools, and they made sure that education was a priority in our lives.
Hmm.
They also taught me about community, they taught me about faith, and when I think of faith, I think of my music beginnings with the Soul Children of Chicago. I
That's
think of,
another thing. Yeah,
yes,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
um,
yeah.
Dr. of all women.
Right.
My origin story begins with me starting at the Apostolic Church of God at 9, serving in the church, just being available to render my gifts unto the Lord. And at that point, I was learning that I was a leader. And so that's part of who I am as well. I think of people who have impacted my life. I think of my fourth grade teacher, and I know I talk about her all the time. Her name was Audrey Humphrey. She was at John T. Perry Elementary School.
I didn't know you went to Perry too.
I went to Perry too.
You're a Pure Panther. We're
I
Pure
am a
Panther.
Perry
I did
Panther.
not know. Yeah, all day.
All day. Yes, I recently went there for some things I was doing for the campaign season,
Mhm.
and the building just looks so much smaller.
I know. I know. Yeah, I've experienced that. Yeah.
And Mr. Crittenden was our gym teacher,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. Is he dead? He's got to be dead.
n- growing up in Chatham, that
Yeah.
is part of my genesis because Chatham was an area in Chicago that many African American families, middle class families lived in.
Mhm.
And it had so much heritage, right?
Yeah.
I grew up in front of the rib joint. So,
Shout out to the rib joint, man. Legend, legend.
down the street from Thule Park,
Absolutely.
all these
The
spaces,
deli.
right on 87th and
Yeah.
King Drive. So when I went to high school, when I went to Whitney Young, I had to take the 87th Street bus to the red line to the blue line. So all of these different things
Mm.
about Chicago have take precedence in my life when I think of origin.
Yeah.
I remember being able to get Doc's Fish on 87th Street. All these and Harold's Chicken was down the street, right?
All day.
All
Yeah.
the things that
Yeah.
now are considered like delicacies are a part of who I am.
Yeah.
Going to be a part, learning how to volunteer, learning how to sit with celebrities and not swoon over the massiveness of who
Mhm.
they are.
Mhm.
Learning to I went with my parents when they went to vote. Like that to me is a part of who I am. Being pushed to do oratory contests and singing in the youth choir.
Mhm.
Sunday school. Listen, I'm a church girl at the end
Yeah.
of the day. We were in
Yeah.
church
Yeah.
every night of the week. Somebody
Yeah.
say amen.
Yeah.
So, and
Yeah.
in most cases on Sundays, we were there when it started and we were there after it closed, hours after it closed, because we were usually serving.
Mhm.
So all of that I think goes into who I am. And then I came from some creative community leaders. So my dad was everybody's dad, the coach, it wasn't sports, it was prayer, it was some kind of wisdom that he shared, and everybody said how approachable he was. So we kind of
Mhm.
learned to be that way when it comes to our relationships. And then my mom was creative. So she sewed, she taught Bible class, she was like a community mom as well, and very, very active in church, active in community. And there were many times that we met our siblings at the schools in which they worked, you know. So
Mhm.
I think all of that, she was a writer as well. All of that goes into my origin story. Southside Chicago, like Michelle Obama, hey, not too far away in terms of growing up,
Mhm.
just really, really, I've been blessed throughout
Yeah.
the years.
Yeah.
That upbringing has really contributed to who I am as a person today.
Oh, absolutely. So I wanna talk about a couple of characters,
Woo!
in your
Character.
origin story. Your parents,
Mhm.
who are two of the most special people to me.
Hmm.
Um, your dad, coach. I'll say this, and it's true, and I think that anybody who knows him and was in our age when we
Mhm.
met him will say he's probably one of the greatest men I've ever met before.
Wow.
Um,
Oh my goodness.
no, no.
Wow.
Man, he was he's amazing, an amazing man. To this day, you talking about a good man, like character and the way he loved his family, the way
Mhm.
he had room enough for all us,
Yeah, yeah.
and he had girls, right? And so we were guys, right? So it was a
Yeah.
little bit different energy, and he was so present, so available. He had what I call, or what I understand now, soft power, right?
Mm.
He wasn't a tyrant. He wasn't loud. That's just not his personality.
Except in the gym
Except in the gym. Now I've seen him.
or on the field.
Yeah,
He's
yeah,
still a
yeah.
coach.
That's what he let all that out there.
Right, right.
But he was, and I'm not even going to say soft spoken, but his personality, just the way he led men, the way he cared for his family, was most unique to me. and it still speaks to me to this day. Um, I'm wondering, how did he shape for you your ideas of masculinity and manhood for
Ooh, that's
you?
really
Because
good.
to me, he set like a really high bar. Like he was just like there's coach and there's basically the rest of everybody else.
So my dad was born and raised in Darien, Georgia. He has those southern characteristics about him where you're going to experience southern hospitality if you come over. He is not a stranger to anyone. Like he will
No.
befriend
Yeah.
people and make you feel like you matter. My father has that strength about him. He's not
Mhm.
intimidated by people
Mhm.
and definitely by men and in power. And so when it comes to masculinity, here's the thing. I had a conversation with one of the sisters at church. She was having a problem saying that God is father. Well, why does everybody want to say our father, God the Father? And she was like, my father wasn't involved in my life. And then so I pointed out to her, I said, good fathers are providers, protectors, and they're the priest of their home, right? So my father modeled that. The
Mhm.
provider, the protector,
Mhm.
and the priest. My father will lead you in prayer,
He
right?
did. He
He'll
did.
lead you right. He give you correction if you need it, right?
Yeah, he did.
When it comes to protection, he will stand up for you. He'll push you and tell you what you need to do. He will literally guard you or shepherd you from trouble. I've heard
Mhm.
stories where he was at Clara Barton Elementary School and gangs were out shooting, and he literally had to move students from the outside where they were having gym into the building to shelter them from gun violence. So he's a protector.
Yeah.
When you talk about provider, I don't have to want about where my next is coming from or how I'm going to be taken care of.
Mhm.
So he has established a high bar for me in terms of what a man should do in your life. Like if
Yeah.
he wants to be a part of your life, there's certain things. He needs to be a gentleman, he needs to be strong, he needs
Mhm.
to be courageous, to be um, he needs to be affectionate,
Yeah.
he needs to be honest, he needs to
Mhm.
love family. My dad
Mhm.
said in a minute, I'm all about family. I'm a family man.
Mhm.
And I saw the way he loved my mother.
Mhm.
They're married and how they were able to be married for over 35 years before
Mhm.
before she transitioned.
Mhm.
And so that to me is an amazing example. But I'll tell you this about my dad, which is crazy. There is no place that I can't go that people don't know him. So
Mhm.
here's my story. This summer, we're downtown at Pritzker Pavilion. We're watching the Curtis Mayfield tribute. Russell was doing a tribute to Curtis Mayfield.
Mhm.
Dad sees one of his former students on the podium.
Mhm.
That big old stage. He's the DJ.
Yeah.
Hey! He points to him. The DJ sees him, was like, Coach! He's on the
Yeah.
stage. It's like
Yeah.
millions of people in the audience.
Yeah.
He's like, that's my former student. Now, here's the other part. I couldn't get to the front. They got guards and all this stuff. My dad stands, walks to the front of the platform. The DJ comes down, was like, y'all, that's Coach.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's my dad.
Look,
So that,
you
growing up
know,
on the farm,
yeah, yeah. If the Bible talks about a good name, having a good name is to be treasured more than riches.
yes.
Nah, your dad, like, it's amazing that even back then he was setting a bar for all of us.
Exactly.
If you've never met Coach Stevens, imagine Marvin Gaye, right? No, 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 because this is all we used to talk about this all the time with him. Like, Coach, I know you saved now, but I know back in
Yeah,
the day you had that.
Lord.
You had that. I know. I did. We're gonna talk about it. I know.
Right.
Um,
Being a ladies'
you
man,
know,
yeah. He
man,
was
I
smooth. I
know
mean, smooth with
them
it.
choir ones. Boy, that's what they.
My dad can bop, he can two step, he do all that.
He's an amazing man.
And he sings too. That's crazy. I mean,
Yeah,
you don't really catch him singing a lot.
yeah, yeah. No,
He
man.
sings.
Let's see
So
you, coach. Let's see you, coach. Your mom, right?
yes.
Very important person to my spiritual development. Um, Renita Stevens.
Yes.
Um,
It's my mama.
there was only one,
Yes.
and I'm wondering now, looking over your shoulder, kind of assessing the time that you had with her. Do you understand her differently now as an adult? Well, of course you do.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah,
I see my mother had a strength about her that I saw as a child one way, but now as an adult I see it differently.
mhm,
To be a black woman, and my mom was a dark complexion woman. To
mhm,
be a black woman, dark complexion, ready to stand, and she was 5'3", so she was short and feisty.
yeah,
But
uh,
to understand her identity and be strong in that, like not intimidated by bullies at the job or bullies at the church, okay?
no, she was
Not
tough.
intimidated by gangsters and thugs, okay? That
No,
didn't mean nothing
no.
to her. To walk in full authority, that Christ has given us, and to be a model, a teacher. I think about it now, and I say to myself, wow, because she sheltered us from a lot of things. Some of the hurt that some of my friends experienced as teens and even as young adults now, I'm just now saying, oh man, I didn't know that even could happen.
Do you feel like you were too sheltered?
Nah,
No.
no,
Mhm.
I wasn't sheltered. I was cultured. See, there's a difference. When you're cultured, you get exposed to different aspects of life.
Mhm.
So we did the Dusable Museum. We did museums. We traveled. She was an educator, so
Mhm.
she exposed us to legends, historical figures, Harold Washington
Yeah.
and Jesse, Reverend Jesse. But then there were also the women of the movement that my
Mhm.
mother exposed me to,
Yeah.
for and women in Pentecost. Can we talk about the women in Pentecost? The Bishop Jackie McCulloughs,
Yeah.
the Dr. Debbie Turners, the
I
Bishop
own a lot.
Joel's, Bishop Iona Locke. My mother, man, when I think about that, talk about the Dr. Maddie Moss Clarks.
Yeah.
My mother exposed us to that.
Yeah.
And I learned that from her, there is nothing you cannot do.
Mhm.
I saw her champion being a radio host. That was her dream.
Yeah.
I saw her model, walk, and rip the runway.
Yeah.
I saw her teach, be a master teacher and be a Golden Apple awardee.
Mhm.
Um, I saw her mentor other teachers at her school. Like there was, when I think about it,
Yeah.
I'm like, that lady was
He was
strong,
amazing.
fearless,
Yeah.
and
And she was good at everything. Like I don't know, like
I was a
everything
little
she.
pressure there because she was good. You're
Yeah.
right. I
Yeah.
mean, when you think of loving people and loving other people's kids, my mother will cook, invite you over, bring out
Absolutely.
the fancy. Remember that the
Yeah.
fancy
Right. Glasses and
tablecloth and
yeah,
glasses. Y'all
all of
was like,
these
y'all eat like
things.
this here. I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, you know, um, we learned how to set a table, and then we learned how, to grace a pulpit. You saw everything
Yeah.
from my mother.
Yeah.
And I think that to me was because of her love for us that she was able to model that. But
Yeah.
literally, we saw that there was nothing we could not do.
Yeah. It was LaShondra's house was where we all came. Oh, like you come in and You didn't even have to knock. You just open the door and like everybody in the living room, like we all chilling.
That was just for y'all.
Yeah, no, right. But that's it was like a community, kind of like a real circle or whatever, where we were all just together, and we were together when we were being spiritually enlightened, right? And Stevens was one of the first people to help me nurture that for myself. Um,
Listen, y'all. When I tell you, I have this, there's still this one message from a book that she gave you. My mother would buy books. Like we spent a lot of time at Harvest Christian Bookstore.
mhm,
We spent hours there with her
mhm,
preparation to teach Sunday school. And I would just sit on the floor, grab a book, sit on the floor, and do some reading. Mommy would buy books for everybody,
yeah,
and then and she would give you the book when she saw you.
yeah,
There's this one book that I can remember. You were I want to say forming kind of your theology, and it was practicing the presence. Remember that? I
absolutely.
will never forget that. And then once you started pastoring, I heard you mention that. And I was like,
Yeah.
Vernita
No,
Stevens.
yeah, absolutely. It's
But
not
it
even.
was so significant,
Yeah,
right? Because what it's
absolutely.
speaking to a lifestyle of worship, a lifestyle of relationship with God
Yeah.
that we all need.
The extension of that was you grew up in a church environment that was significant, um, and unique environment to grow up in. You grew up in the Apostolic Church of God,
What,
under the one and only Bishop Arthur Brazier, who was just a giant. Um, I think there's a book that should be written about Chicago black churches in the 1960s, 70s, 80s that centers around Clay Evans,
oh, absolutely.
Lewis Henry Ford, and Arthur
Yes,
Brazier, because they
absolutely.
basically designed the whole South Side for black people, and people don't know that.
Tell the truth. And
Yeah.
I was recently reading about that in my doctoral studies. We were talking it was talking about how Reverend Clay Evans was trying to build fellowship, and there was an
Mhm.
issue with Richard J. Daley
Yeah.
where he kept preventing the loan.
You know why? What was the issue?
The highway.
Not only that, it was that Clay Evans supported Dr. King,
Exactly. That's true
when
too.
Dr. King came north
Came
to
to Chicago.
Chicago.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so old man Daly held up his
Yeah.
permits for
Yeah.
years, like
Held up
almost
his
10
permits
years.
for years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was Arthur Brazier and Lewis Henry Ford who
Yeah.
went down to talk to Mayor
The
Daley to
mayor.
say, let him build his church. And that's how
Absolutely.
fellowship got built.
Come on.
Yeah.
And then the homes that came after that they built. Um, we saw faith in action
Mhm.
by their example, not just, talking. We saw how the church is empowered for community development, and how the church then can create a culture that influences the world's culture,
Mhm.
right? And I think that if that book is going to be written, it might be written from you.
No, you should. No,
That's
it
a
needs to
good
be written
book.
by somebody. Like
Yeah,
it's just
absolutely.
it's important, I think, to kind of understand that where Woodline is right now, where Fellowship is in Chicago, and how they're situated. The L stations and public transportation was designed between those three men.
Exactly.
Like to being
Exactly.
able to extend the rail line to come over to Woodline to push to make sure that there was a train that passes 47th Street
Absolutely.
where Clay Evans Fellowship was at 47th, 48th and Princeton,
Princeton.
47th and Princeton. Um, those men worked with Mayor Daley, who was a racist, who was horribly racist,
Absolutely.
to make sure that black people could get to work and they could get to church. And because of that, there was political gain for Mayor Daley, right?
It was.
Um, I think that story needs to be told. Um,
That's a movie when I think about it.
it absolutely is, and to take it a step further, by the 1980s, the black middle class, which for black people on the South Side of Chicago, Arthur Brazier was a champion for them.
Absolutely.
Though these were the people that helped galvanize Harold Washington, the
Come
first
on,
mayor of Chicago.
historian.
Yeah,
Run them
no,
facts.
if they hadn't done that, and if Apostolic Church of God hadn't have been a base for all of that, who
Absolutely.
didn't get their props to? A.R. Leak.
Yeah.
A.R. Leak probably needs to be a documentary about A.R. Leak. In that when Dr. King came to Chicago, it was A.R. Leak who made sure that they had cars, that they had transportation during the city, and he helped fund what Dr. King was doing, whether it was in the North, whether in the South. But that's a whole nother con. Let's
And
talk about
one
Arthur.
more significant person, Mahalia Jackson.
Absolutely.
You
Uh,
know, if
we
we're
didn't
going
talk about the
to
women like who
come
don't get
on.
their.
Absolutely. You know, I'm always going to bring women into the
Yeah, we
conversation.
absolutely should. So thank you. Whether that's Addie Wyatt, whether that's
Yes.
Willie Taplin Barrow, whether
Yes.
that's Mahalia, whether it's Albertina,
Come
and
on.
all of these women who don't get press, and
Hmm.
that's a shame. But they were there, and
They were
without
there.
them, would not have happened. Like
Exactly.
just it just wouldn't have happened. So,
Exactly.
um, Arthur Brazier, what was that like
Hmm.
for you as a young girl there, and then you've been through every season of your life attached to that particular body.
I
What have
have, when I
you?
think about it, I
Yeah,
definitely have.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, Bishop to me was a how do I put it? Like he was a statesman,
Hmm.
but he was an outstanding preacher. Um, the way he would close his messages, like to me, were so significant. So you see a model of his preaching style, but then also Bishop didn't have an entourage.
No,
He
no,
wasn't like the pastors in the 90s and the 2000s and the millennium pastors
he
that
was
got to have a
different.
whole crew.
Yeah, he
Bishop
was
didn't,
different.
he did not walk around like that. He was very approachable.
Yeah.
He would take out his calendar, he pull it out his jacket. You
Mhm.
say you wanted an appointment. He would find a time where you guys could meet. He scheduled his own appointments. That was very significant. So approachable. He was so we learn about being humble. We learn about being approachable. We learn about having a bigger vision of what you can do in this world when you look at Bishop's life.
Yeah.
So not just from his preaching and teaching, but when you look at the fact that he was a family man, which is really important.
Mhm.
Coming up, he modeled what a black man should
Sure.
do in his household and how he can lead his family, how he can lead his church. He modeled walking by faith, because remember when our church wanted to expand in the 80s, there was a high-rise housing building right next to Apostolic, and the owner of the high-rise building they couldn't find. So there was one Sunday that we all gathered and walked around the building 7 times, just like in the Bible days, so that we could be able to expand the campus because we were on 3 services, and the church was just growing, growing, growing. So we see how ministry expansion happens. We see how literally you can live out your faith so that people see it in every area of life, not just in the pulpit,
Mhm.
in the schoolhouse.
Mhm.
What I love about the legacy of Bishop Brazier is when I talk about the Wilson wagons. I'm not sure. I think you know about the Wilson wagons. So in the 60s, the school segregated, and black students attended school in these wagons. They were like what do you call them? They were like trailers. They were like
Mhm.
trailers.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I remember those.
And so they were labeled the Wilson wagons. And Bishop was influential with getting rid of those trailers where the black students were learning and moving them into school buildings where the schools were desegregated in Chicago.
Mhm.
And I love telling that story because many people don't know that about what Bishop did at that time. So not only was he responsible with getting or helping with Dr. King and his mission, but also so that children in Chicago didn't have to freeze in these little trailers where they were having this segregated learning, right?
Mhm.
And that's really, really important to think about.
Yeah. One of a few things that I want to talk to you about. One is um, my background is Pentecostal, um, classically Pentecostal. You Apostolic Church, the PAW Church, was an independent Pentecostal um, organization, and our ideas about salvation were very different. Our theology around salvation was very different. You could lose salvation like every other day for very
Hello.
frivolous reasons. But as a teenager, when I heard Bishop Brazier teach on the eternal security of the believer,
Come on. And that
radicalized my thinking.
yeah,
Um,
that
to
no
this,
man can pluck you out of God's hand. That right there. That text.
no, 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 no. He was a theologian, could open his Bible
Yeah.
and did not talk around it. Like he was a great teacher,
Straight to
great
it.
theologian that had great impact on me developing my own theology.
Hmm.
Um, there is a, and I'm wondering for you because we talked about the women of your church, these great women of God, namely, let's say those who
Evangelist Ivory Knuckles.
oh my God, legend, legend. I mean, it's just.
Hello.
But I'm wondering about you being a church, being a woman in the apostolic church. It seems to me, and you could correct me, please correct me if I'm wrong, that it has not been always a hospitable place for women in ministry. And I will say that the women who have come out of the PA, who labored in the PAW church, ultimately had left the PAW church in order to be raised to the episcopacy, to do other things. And whether you're talking about a Bishop Jackie McCullough or Bishop Iona Locke or Bishop Carolyn Showell that had to leave the church in order to be recognized in the episcopacy like that. I'm wondering, how do you understand that space, not just for the woman you are in it, but to see their lives and to understand the impact of their legacy? And to, do you ever question, well, why there seems to be this dissonance with women leaders, pastors, and the apostolic church?
That's a loaded question, but I love it.
Mm-hmm.
So, being a woman in ministry and in leadership in ministry, those women that you named set the bar and broke the ceiling. They
Mm-hmm.
broke the glass ceiling, right?
Sure.
Um, Unfortunately, they were restricted, but they were scholars, so they knew the word for themselves, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
They
No.
weren't intimidated by male dominance and
Sure.
patriarchy in the church. They weren't intimidated by what people thought they could not do. They went when God said go. And if we're going to learn anything about our faith, it is that sometimes God sends us outside of comfortable places so that
Mhm.
we can do great things to bring Him glory.
Uh-huh.
I can be comfortable being the woman of God that I am because of the sacrifices they made and the trails that they blazed.
Mhm.
It is very difficult today, not
Mhm.
just in PAW, in all kinds of churches, every denomination, corporate
Absolutely.
America. Even in the WNBA, the women who playing basketball, they're still making way less more
Yeah.
than those in the NBA, the men in the NBA.
Yeah.
So there always seems to be this gender issue when it comes to efficiency, skills, knowledge, spirituality, all these things. But
Mhm.
you have to know who God has called you to be.
Mhm.
And because of their example, we draw strength on that. I was in Germany. Was it Germany? I was in Switzerland, 2017. I went to this museum. It was called the Reformation Museum.
Mhm.
Big, huge museum. You have all the Martin Luthers and fathers of the faith. Even had Reverend Jesse Jackson in there. Trailblazers. I saw one black woman
Mhm.
in the basement of the museum.
Mhm.
Bishop Vashti McKenzie.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was like, this is so necessary
Yeah.
because women do things beyond when their recognition is not available, right?
Sure.
And what I learned as a leader is seek the Lord for the vision, be confident in what he wants you to do, and then do it.
Mhm.
Don't worry about who doesn't receive you or who thinks it can't be done.
Yeah.
Do it anyway.
Do do is there examples for you a cautionary tale? Because it seems like
Oh,
to me
absolutely.
by the end, as they matured, having to separate ultimately from the church in order to establish their work that was never affirmed by the church of their Genesis, right? It seemed like it was a lonely space for them, and to that end, they were single. They were single doing ministry, which carries its own type of burdens with it. I'm just,
Mhm.
I'm just wondering how does that speak to you as you're kind of futuring and visioning yourself as a leader in the church.
I tell you. Only you, brother.
I said we just talking, chopping it up,
So many of the women that went forth, that have exited large Christian organizations and founded their own, have been single women.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate, but it's the reality of it. And me being 45 and single,
Mhm.
being an assistant pastor, going to seminary, being in ministry practically all of my life,
Mhm.
I've come to the grips with the fact that there may be several years before someone actually decides that they want to partner in life with me.
Mhm.
And that reality is very sad. Because I remember as a teenager, I knew I had a calling. And I was trying to negotiate with God. And I was like, Lord, I'm going to pursue ministry, but please let me be married by 35. I'm
Mhm. Mhm.
still waiting.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think, and so, I think women in ministry are open and ready to be loved,
Mhm.
but there's such a great cost that goes along with being in ministry.
Do you think it's worth it?
I really do. Like I do. Like I would love for there to be a man of God to cover me.
No, no, no. I'm saying, do you think the cost and the
Oh,
sacrifice is worth it?
well, when you look at the seed that has grown,
Mhm.
the um the generation that's impacted of worshipers, of people who are in ministry and succeeding, I think it's worth it.
Okay.
And when you look at a Mother Teresa, when you look at there's so many women who did ministry and were single.
Yeah.
They made the commitment
Hmm.
to only to serve God, and that's what they do. Um,
Let me ask you this.
yeah.
I've also understood the example of Apostolic Church of God as a political space and the political power of the Black church,
Mm.
specifically the Black um, pastor. It was around 2000. It had to be 2009, 2010. There was a picture released by the White House, and it's a picture of Bishop Brazier in the Oval Office sitting down with the Black. And that it just, gosh, that was so great. I love that picture. If I could find it, I'd make a copy and frame it, put it on the wall, because I understand who Bishop Brazier was, and I understand the young Barack Obama in
Right.
Chicago needing,
Giant.
to make these relationships and understanding who he was and understanding who Apostolic Church of God was. To that end, though, 2006, no, 2007, right? Barack Obama's running for president. He comes to Apostolic Church of God on Father's Day. Of course, he's welcomed. It's Father's Day. It's a for Black churches. That's a big deal. Father's Day, and he allows then Senator Barack Obama to come and to be the guest speaker that morning. And um,
I was
he,
there.
yeah, well, he begins to lecture on Black fathers and responsibility, and
He did.
and I found it dissonant, as I've had tensions with a couple of a few moments with President Obama and Black people and Black crowds, and what he says to Black people in front of cameras and how I
Hmm.
understand that. But it just seems like, and it seems like it echoed again when he goes to Morehouse and gives that commencement speech and then lectures them on responsibility. It's like, well, I just graduated, and just my mom and dad, like I just,
Right.
but then I understand the politics of who's in the audience in the room and actually who he is talking to, right? Um, you were in the room that day. I'm wondering, as you sat there, and I understand the moment, and I understand the relationship between Black community and Barack Obama. Did you, in that moment, did like your hackles raise a little bit? Did it just a little twinge, like, this isn't about Apostolic Church of God, men who bring their families, like your father, bring their families to church on Father's Day and get a lecture about fatherhood, right? The idea that the Black pulpit can be used for a few different reasons, for a few different occasions, that has nothing to do necessarily with the glorious gospel of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. It is a utility, because it is a pulpit. I'm wondering how you experienced that being in the room, and what are your thoughts about it, what, 10, 12, 15 years later? Um,
So that's an interesting perspective of the message. Now, I have to say that I had to watch that message after it was aired because I was on the youth side.
mhm.
But
Full
we,
day for you that day. I know.
huh?
It was a full day for you that day. It was a busy day. I know.
I was on the youth side, and President Obama did come over on the teen side and greet the teens. I
Mhm.
actually handed the mic to him, which, when I think about it, was kind of special, I guess.
Mhm.
But the real reason why Barack, I thought, was appropriate for speaking on that day is because he had experienced a fatherhood love from Bishop.
Mhm.
And even though the message may not have uh, been as suitable for the audience per se, the fact that they had this relationship and he had helped our church as a young attorney with land plots and some other things that they needed that we needed in the years prior. It became an opportunity for him then to encourage those who don't necessarily take good care of their families, right? To to respect and honor the ones that do. And that's kind of how I
Mhm.
heard that message.
Mhm.
And his family was there. All the fathers stood. It was thousands of black men at church
Which
that
seems a little, which seems a little like that's my
yeah,
point. Like it's like
yeah, yeah.
that's
But you
so. Do
know,
you understand that moment different now than you did
absolutely,
in the? Okay, all right.
absolutely.
Mhm.
Now I do. I mean, I think it was just a swell of joy because he was now reaching the point of becoming the next
Mhm.
president.
Mhm.
And Father's Day is usually the day that we celebrate the men who have impacted our lives the most.
Mhm.
So, I mean, that was my frame of mind in that moment.
Mhm.
And then when I look back, I was like, oh, okay. But he
Yeah.
does still do some things that makes you say,
Mm.
you know,
Mm.
legislation as a president,
Mm.
who did that really benefit? Like,
Mm.
what was,
Mm.
yeah, but I think we all were just excited about the fact that he was at the church. He brought
Sure.
his family and he was honoring Bishop and being there because that was his request. So that's
And,
really
and I think it's a testament to the character of Bishop Brazier
right.
and their relationship that even when Bishop Brazier made his transition, the Obama presence
There.
was
Hmm.
there
Hmm.
tangibly, like and
Yeah.
so um, I understand it now. I understand that you cannot separate the black church from its politics.
Right.
We have to engage in
Yeah.
order to be able to make sure resources and things are available for the communities that we serve, not just our faith communities, but the communities that the faith community is in.
Right.
And I don't think anybody, perhaps has done that better than Dr. Arthur Brazier, and God bless him.
And did it without a model. Like, who was his model of how to do this kind of
Yeah,
in
it's
ministry?
I
But I think, I mean, he was a veteran. He was a
yeah.
he served in the armed forces. He
Was
worked
it
for
Korea?
post office.
Was it Korea or was it?
I think it was I think it was Vietnam. I don't think it
Okay,
was Korea.
okay, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, but all those different things I think
Sure.
made him the man that he was,
Yeah.
and willing to do things that other people at that time could never imagine.
No.
It's now second nature though. It's now second nature as a leader of a church to have some kind of influence in
Got
community
to.
development
Yeah.
and legislation, those kinds of things now.
Yeah.
But they were crafting that model in those days.
And for him to do it without being in political office, right?
Yeah.
Like there were some preachers who were politicians. That was their vocation. But for him to do it outside of that space and to wield as much influence and power as he did, it's a book. It is a documentary, and it's
Yeah.
an amazing story. So let's talk about stuff that we come here to talk about.
Uh-oh.
Who first taught you about love and gave you your linguistics for love? And I'm wondering, was it did they sit you down and say, well, this is what love is, this is what is not, or was it modeled for you, and out of what you saw, you begin to develop your own language for
Who taught me? Who gave me the linguistics for love? Okay, so there, you've hinted to it. It was modeled. for me in my household first,
Mhm.
about my first teachers. But in terms of the language, I would say that came from my mother.
Mhm.
In terms of the actions where I understood love as action, it would have come from my father.
Mhm.
And in terms of the example, I think there were several examples of love. So my grandparents, my dad's parents, they
Mhm.
were married 50 years
Mhm.
before my grandmother passed away.
Mhm.
Abraham and Lucille Stevens.
Absolutely.
And my mother's parents are still married. They've
Mhm.
been married 73 years. And that's Forrest and Claire Lofton. So I have had some talks. I have had some talks about love with my grandmother.
Mhm.
I have had some talks about love with my mother. She didn't hold anything back
Right.
when it
That
came to
wasn't her thing. Yeah. You-
when it came to love and sex,
yeah.
okay? Because she felt like she needed to be the one to teach me and that I
Mhm.
shouldn't learn it from my friends.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
that was very significant.
Mhm.
Um, and she would use the words that were popular, the
Yes,
things
sir.
that the kids were saying in high school and in grade school at her school.
Mhm.
Um, I can only think of one crazy word that I don't want to think of.
Mhm.
I don't
Yeah,
want to
I
say
get
it on
it.
loud, but she was like, "Smashing is not love."
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
She was like, "Your self worth is not found in your body and
Mhm.
what you do with your body,
Mhm.
right? That's valuable."
Mhm.
Um, she taught me about being choosy or
Mhm.
having choices. She was like,
Mhm.
"You always have a choice. You can choose to love
Mhm.
or choose not to love."
Mhm.
Right? That's the linguistics that I'm thinking of. Um, and my dad would he would just give me the attributes of what being loved felt like or included.
Mhm.
So this is before the five love languages
Sure.
existed. My dad would say stuff like, the reason why I help around the house is because I know that to your mom, that means I love her. So now we call that acts of love, right? You see what
Mhm.
I'm saying?
Mhm.
Or the fact that he would take her to work and drive her to work. That was his way of showing love, right?
Mhm.
Or and then the one of the reasons why she would make sure that he had something to eat because she knew that said to him that she loved him,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So all those things working together helped me to understand my definition of what love is and what love does.
Yeah.
And I think it was helpful. I think it was helpful.
Absolutely. I'm interested in this also is that sometimes we're not taught about love. We have to learn it on our
On
own.
our own.
Yeah, observing and things like that. So then we start dating, first girlfriend, first boyfriend, fall in love. Um, then when you break up, right? And your heart is broken,
Yeah.
but they don't teach us how to heal from a broken heart, or they don't even teach us how to break up. Like, okay, once we decided we're not doing this anymore, do I have to hate you in order to go on? Like those kind of things. And I'm wondering how you processed brokenheartedness,
Woo!
disappointment in relationships early on. Again, where did you get your language for that, or did you have to kind of stumble through that on your own? And then how do you understand healing and recovery from a broken heart now as you are, grown and an adult?
Okay. So as a teenager, I'll just have to be 100. As a teenager, I call myself liking guys. My mother really didn't want me dating.
Mhm.
They would let me go to little things, but I really wasn't supposed to have a boyfriend.
Mhm.
And I did experience some breakups. And one of the ways that I learned to get beyond having a broken heart was talking it out, talking it out either with some girlfriends or auntie. Aunties were very helpful.
Mhm.
And just getting to the place where I could get beyond it. I would either get more involved in my Bible study and doing something at the church or soul children or something like that. And I really didn't tend to it. But that was
Mhm.
the young heart. Then as I got older, um, as as the first person that I call myself loving, being in love with, chose someone else
Mhm.
and married her. Uh, I was crushed. So my first response was, "I'm not going to eat," and I love food, so that was kind of stupid. And so I was in my room whooping,
Mhm.
crying my eyes out, and trying not to deal with the fact that my heart was broken. My mother gave me a heart to heart and introduced me to retail therapy.
That's your mother. No, 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 no.
Listen, let me tell you.
That's your
And
mother.
she was like, "Come with me."
Yeah.
Her come with me was we went to the mall.
Mhm.
She showed some things that what she thought would look good on me. So
Mhm.
now what she's trying to teach me is to reimagine myself beyond this pain.
Mhm.
I have language for it now
Yeah.
when I look back at it.
Yeah.
Reimagining myself beyond that pain, what would that look like?
Mhm.
And she would let me know that my value wasn't tied to this man, this relationship.
Mhm.
So there was a lot of uh, nurturing that would happen
Mhm.
and self care that got me to a point of being okay with the breakup.
Mhm.
And I've kind of learned that behavior as a way to deal with the pain from talking it through, um, from making myself appreciate what I gained from the relationship and then trying to see myself beyond that relationship,
Mhm.
and that's kind of how I've dealt with losses, and that's how
Mhm.
I've dealt with breakups. And people will say, "Well, God has someone better for you," and I'm like, "That don't hurt. That I mean, that don't help. I don't want to hear somebody God got some. Why isn't this? Why isn't he
I
better?
don't want nobody better. I want this
Right?
one.
I don't want nobody better. That's who I wanted." But in conversation, I began to see, there was a reality. There's a scripture that talks about God being the Alpha and Omega, and the right, knowing the end from the beginning.
Mhm.
And my my understanding of that is because His plan is working, and I'm experiencing this pain. The time will come where I'll go from being hurt to being able to be healed. Because I
Mhm.
didn't want to be healed while I was hurting. I was just like, look, I don't
Mhm.
care. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not eating. I don't feel like going. I don't feel like talking to nobody, and my mother literally had to like grab me and say, "This is not the end of your life.
Mhm.
And God has something more for you."
You know, I, that's a space that we don't get a lot of conversation about. I remember very early on thinking that when a relationship ended, it had to be this big argument and kind of blow up. We had to
Because
hate each
many
other.
many relationships did end like that.
Well, it was like we had to hate each other in order to get
Yeah.
away from each other,
Mhm.
right? Because if we didn't do that, then there would always be this thing that pulls us back towards each other, even if it was unhealthy, right? So it was like the hate pushed us away so we could both move on. I think you get like, and even as I experienced divorce, I was angry and bitter for years.
But
Like,
divorce will make you angry and bitter.
yeah, and
When you love hard, you're gonna be upset that it didn't work.
well, sometimes what you're angry about is not just about love, right?
True.
It's part of what you're angry about is part of it is that you didn't have a plan B, right?
Mm.
That I never imagined myself without you, and now I have to do this work to reimagine my life, and I didn't want to do this, like I, and we cast people in roles sometimes that they don't even know that we cast them in, right? They're unaware of whatever role we need them to play, and they're not privy to all of our abandonment issues and all of the things that we understand as adults are our triggers, right? And so you can be angry for years because someone refused to play this role in your life.
Mhm.
And what I found out is that, first of all, that's corrosive, right? Because I can't walk into every restaurant looking for her and want to knock her salad off a table just because I'm still mad. Like, yes, I probably need to grow up. Like, I need to do that. But I think what has helped me, and I had this experience too, like my mother did this. Um, this was years ago now, long, long time ago. I was in love. It's crazy. It was, yeah, it
Well,
was.
I want to applaud you on being in love because there are men out here that don't want to experience being in love and they would rather experience feeling like they have the upper hand rather than be vulnerable enough to love somebody. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
there's great risk in that. It didn't
Mhm.
work out. And so I was physically ill, like sick. Like I couldn't leave the house.
I,
I couldn't talk to anybody. Like
yeah,
it was it was it was bad. Like, and I think I took off from church like a month. Like I couldn't do it.
oh
Like
wow.
it was bad. And I didn't want to talk to anybody, and I wasn't really answering the phone. But I'll respond to her texts, and like, okay, I'm fine. One day, her and Nash show up at my house unannounced. I'm in my bathrobe, got a hat on, like I'm just,
Go team, go.
yeah, like full beard and everything. Like I had, like, I'm just, can't do it. She comes over with her bottle of oil.
Come on, mom.
She did. She sure did.
That see.
And she had to like, okay, like we finna bind the devil, we finna pray. I understand what you're going through, but you know, this ain't the end of your life, and you gotta find your way out of this. And
Exactly.
that little push, it helped me, right? So I love my mother, because she knew when to give me space, and then she knew like, okay, now
This is too much.
you got to come out of this. Like
I'm
this is
out.
not, so no, stop this. Um, Your mom. One of the things our parents don't teach us about, and sometimes the church doesn't either, is to teach us how to live life without them.
Mhm.
Um, and your mother passed. How long has it been now?
13 years. I'm sorry. I'm trying to find I don't know
Oh,
where my video is.
yeah.
Can't see you.
You can't see me. I can see you.
I'm sure you can. I
Okay.
don't know what we're doing. Go ahead. Let's see if I can.
So she transitioned about 13 years ago, and
Mhm.
that was a huge loss for all of us. I'm wondering, how did you experience that? Your mom passed before my grandmother and my dad passed, and it changes you.
Oh, absolutely.
And sometimes it takes you years to understand, how that changes you, but it changes you, and then you understand them differently. Like you
Mhm.
kind of you're in relationship with them, but the relationship's kind of changed.
I have no idea what's going on with my computer. I'm sorry.
It's okay. We can pause till you get it together.
Yeah.
This is it's probably Elon Musk doing something. He's doing everything nowadays. He's absolutely ruining everything nowadays. So it's fine.
Go ahead. I'm gonna try to. Yeah, I'm not. This has never happened.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody called me and all of my. Maybe this is it. Nope, that's not. Nope,
Mm-hmm.
that's not it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, people.
Oh, this got all kind of things going on.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
How did the question was? How did what?
Um. How have you processed grief? How did you process it then, and caring for um, a sick parent
Hmm,
is an experience. That's a
it
different
is.
thing. And then when they ultimately um, pass away, that's a whole nother experience. And I'm wondering what's going on in your head and your heart during that time.
It was a whirlwind.
Hmm.
If I can be honest with you, it was a whirlwind. Caring for a sick parent. First of all, I didn't think my mother wasn't going to still be here, and I had so much faith that a miracle was going to occur.
Hmm.
And mommy wasn't completely honest with us concerning her condition.
Hmm.
She told us she had stage 4 colon cancer, but in my mind, there was a stage after 4. I
Hmm.
didn't know stage 4 was terminal, right?
Hmm.
Um, so what we learned to do was cherish the moments that we had together and really just continue to care for one another.
Hmm.
The doctors called our family together. This is how naive I was. The doctors said, "Gather your family." Um, and everybody was there but me because I believe in by faith that, this
Hmm.
is not the end.
Hmm.
I went to work and everybody else was at the meeting. And the doctor says there's nothing more we can do. And I was told that everybody was crying. I had an exchange with the Lord on the way to work, and I said, God, I don't like my mother suffering. I just need you to be honest with me. What's going to happen here? And he actually said to me, you know, brace yourself. Get ready. And I was like, what? So when I get to my desk, I find out that my dad calls me. He says, hey, you need to come home from work. The doctor said your mom is not going to make it. And I was like, what? So in my mind, I'm thinking all these, we did this prayer, we anointed our hands, we did all these doctor's visits, we had all these surgeries, we've been back and forth, la la la. This can't be real.
Hmm.
But I grew in my knowledge of who God is.
Hmm.
I realized through time that sometimes this healing process means being with Him, right?
Hmm.
Not living any longer on earth, but experiencing the ultimate healing that comes from your relationship with God.
Hmm.
That to me was a turning point because until then I had seen so many miracles. Um, I heard of people who were healed from cancer. I knew of people that my mother prayed for that were healed for cancer,
Hmm.
breast cancer, and some other things. And I was just like, what are you saying?
Hmm.
We had to mature, is what I'm really trying to say. We had to grow up. And what started in that season has continued. And so part of my pillars I don't want to say identity core. Part of my core values now is to have fun because life
Mhm.
is short. Faith, family, fun.
Mhm.
And the reason why I need to have fun is because I need to feel um, the joy that comes with being in Christ and living in a toe up world. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? That security that comes with knowing who Jesus is, that no matter what the situation is, you are still a conqueror.
Mhm.
Now, this healing and loss process, I was in denial a long time. That's the first stage. I didn't know. Later found out when I went to counseling that that was the first stage. And then I tried to bargain with the Lord, bargaining with the second stage. Take me, Jesus.
Mhm.
We try some of everything. And I learned through the tears. I learned, first of all, that I needed to cry because
Mhm.
I did not cry. And by not crying, it affected my health. So this is
Mhm.
maturity, growing up, maturity, growing up.
Sure.
Um, I had alopecia, I lost my hair,
Mhm.
my skin broke out. I had there's still little parts of it left on my hands, but psoriasis happened. I had to take 3 months off in ministry, and I got a medical leave from church. I mean, from work, because I needed to mature. I needed to sit in the reality of you can't prevent God's plan from coming forth.
Mhm.
And since you can't prevent it, you got to deal with the fact that He's sovereign.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so I had to mature into that, being in a place of okay. I'm
Mhm.
okay with the fact that my mother fulfilled her purpose. And now I've got to walk in my own purpose and calling.
Mhm.
I wish I do have times where I'm like, Dad, I wish my mama was here, especially when people get cutting up. Because I feel like, if she was here, she'd get them together.
Would.
But now that's my job.
Right.
You can't let people just take advantage of you and you don't stand up for yourself. She showed us what to do,
Yeah.
right?
Um.
And I mean, and that's very significant.
Sure. I don't know if our upbringing teaches us about death itself.
Oh, not
Right.
really. No.
Um.
Mm-mm.
And because we don't talk about it, because it's not normalized, because we don't learn how, we're not taught how to live with it when it comes.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, especially if it's somebody that's a part of us, right? I think
Yeah.
that the thing that we have to understand about being human is when we are in relationship over time, the cells in our body are connected to someone else on a cellular level. They are
Wow.
a part of who I am. And then
Yes.
all of a sudden, they're not there. I don't know me anymore.
Yes.
Like, I don't,
Yeah.
like, oh, wait a minute.
Yeah.
A part
You're
of
telling
me,
the truth. You are telling the
yeah, like
truth.
a part of me is gone, and I don't know me anymore. And I think that I'm a philosophy major, so there was this class that I saw in my department on death and dying, right? Because
Oof.
I'm fascinated, and I wanted to be in a non-religious space to just hear how humans have talked about this idea of our mortality, um, our traditions in different spaces about the afterlife and the process of dying itself. And one of the things that I've come away with, and I married that with my theology, is that death should not be resisted,
Hmm.
especially if we're born again, right?
Yeah.
Death is not a curse for
It's
the
not.
saints. It is not something to be disparaged. It is our way to get back to our. It is just a door to get back to our Creator. And so it's not about whether someone, when they die, they're not alive. Yes, they are. They exist somewhere. Um,
Absolutely.
they are not. with me in this space, and that is my hiccup. Um, it is not about them. This is me. Like what I'm not ready to let you go. I'm not ready to be without you. I am not ready to. And then since they taught us about prayer, they didn't tell us that prayer doesn't change.
God's will.
Right. And it doesn't necessarily change always natural laws that God put in place, right?
Exactly.
And so when it happens, it's like, well, did my prayers not work? Are you not hearing me right now? Did I,
Yeah.
like Job, right? Did I sin? Did I do something, right?
Right.
All of these natural questions that we have that sometimes in our theology in church, we don't really talk about the blessedness
Mm.
of dying in the Lord, right? And what that means for them and what that means for us, right? Because we got text even in scripture. God, I could do this with you because this is what you do.
Yes, you can.
We know there are witnesses, great cloud of
Cloud
witnesses.
of
We
witnesses.
got that in the text, right? So it's not like they don't exist. They are conscious. They
Mhm.
are with their creator. They are conscious of us. My hiccup is I want you here with me for me. And I think that when I begin to understand that it's not something to be resisted but to be embraced, that death is a part of life, it is a part of our circle. There's nobody who was ever born who did not die. Long before you and I got here, centuries, right?
Centuries.
The equalizer
Come on.
is death, and so it is natural.
Mhm.
um and it is a great renegotiation of our relationship with our departed, with those who have transitioned, because they speak to us. I would tell you this. This is the honest to God truth, and this could be put in a few different contexts. My grandmother, when I was a kid, used to make me pancakes. Um,
Mm.
and I love. She used to
What
make them
kind?
from scratch, buttermilk from scratch. We're talking
Buttermilk.
about getting the buttermilk, getting the flour, getting the vanilla extract, getting the butter. She would do all of that cornstarch, do, and she would do it. Her house, the whole house would be filled with like this
Mm.
wonderful smell. And um, one of my great childhood memories. And so when I got like in my 20s, I was like, could you give me the recipe for it? Because I wanted,
Ooh.
I wanted pancakes, but I don't know. I can't
Um,
always come back here and make you make. I mean, she's 90 years old. I can't make her stand at the stove making pancakes. So I was like, seems a little selfish. So let me
yeah.
let me learn how to do it. And so she wrote it down for me and she gave it to me. When she passed away, I couldn't find the recipe.
Hmm.
Like I could not look, and I was like, I can't find it. I can't find it. Maybe for about a year or something. Like I couldn't find it. One night I had a dream. She came to me in the dream and she told me the recipe. I woke up in the morning and I wrote it down. And on her birthday now, I make pancakes.
Oh, I love you've
Uh,
created a ritual. I love
yeah,
it.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it's amazing that my house, wherever I am, and I'm making pancakes, it takes me back in my senses. It
Right
smells just
there.
like her house when I was 6 years old, right? And it is a way that we commune. It is a way that we understand that those we are loved can never really die
Never
because
die.
love doesn't recognize death,
Does
right?
not.
It ignores it. It doesn't matter
Love
if you're
never
here or
die.
not. My love is alive, and your love for me is alive. And there are ways in which we as humans, I think, can find peace with that. And I think it needs to be more in our theology. And this is maybe what you need to do because this is your work. This is what you do, is to be able to give us language and ideas about how we live with our departed,
Exactly.
and to think about them, and it doesn't hurt.
Hmm. Yeah.
That's
So
important.
people used to tell me, you look just like your mother.
Mm,
And at first I used to cringe like, oh. Then I realized I do.
yeah, yeah,
And what are they really saying? They're not necessarily speaking to the physicality of who I am, although that could be a part of it.
hmm,
But they are, if I use these words, conjuring up
sure,
their image of who my mother was that I am now embodying, right? And that is present with them.
yeah,
So there's a sweet communion happening. They're
Absolutely.
reminded of her. I'm
Yeah.
reminded of her, and together we are experiencing that that fellowship of who she was, right?
Absolutely.
And it's almost
Absolutely.
like she's present.
Absolutely.
So I
Um,
love it. I embrace it now. It's like,
yeah,
yeah, I
yeah.
do. Thank
Your
you.
little sister, Tony Antoinette, I
And,
call
and
her. She
mhm.
was working with our church, and
Yeah.
we were recording one day, and so I'm talking to them up front. She says something to somebody, and I turn around, and I thought it was Vernita Stevens. I promise you, like the tone of voice, the tenor, what she said, the way she said it. I turned around, I said, "Vernita Stevens will never die." Because you are, if that ain't Vernita Stevens, I will eat my hat. I said, "Look, that is your mother," and
Yes,
I think in ways in which we have those connections are so healing for
it
us,
is. It is.
right?
That's why I said we get to the point where we embrace it because we realize that to deny that it exists is actually denying who we are.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think there's great peace in that. I
That's
think
that's
that
the comfort and peace. Absolutely.
I think part of our grief, sometimes as we understand it, is a lot of anguish about, and it's kind of like a child
The finality
pouting,
of it.
pouting because you took my blanket away. Like I
Yeah.
want my blanket, and you could be years wrapped up. Not just grief of someone passing, but our relationships that don't last are that's grief. We're grieving the relationship, and it's all about us. I want you here for me. I want you to do this, and I think that when we make peace with that, and this is also good too, that we could spend the rest of our lives being angry about somebody who is not here with us anymore, whether they had passed away or whether we broke up or whatever. And you could do that. It just seems exhausting. Like I've been there. I've been miserable for years trying to get over something and someone. But I think I had to reframe it to say, well, okay, I didn't get to keep them as long as I wanted to, but I can spend the rest of my life being grateful that I had them at all.
That's it.
Right? I didn't keep love as long as I wanted to keep it, but I had it. And that's way more than what some people ever had in their life, right? And that love, even though they're gone, whether they pass away or we broke up, can still feed you. It can still be healing for you in its own way. And I think that as we reframe these things for ourselves, we find so much harmony
Hmm.
with life and with God and with each other, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we then begin new traditions,
Hmm.
right? That's also part of our healing process. We begin new traditions. Um, we may bake something that our grandmother or mother baked. Like lately, I've been thinking about these recipes my mother gave me. I knew a lot of them, and some of them I kind of forgot. And I think I
Hmm.
forgot it just because I was like, I can't deal with the fact that when I make it, I'm thinking about my mother. But now that
Yeah.
I've matured, I'm like, yeah, when I make it, I'm thinking about my mother. I want to taste the way she made it because it made me feel loved and it made
Yeah.
me feel comfortable.
Yeah.
So now new tradition. So I will bake the cake that my grandmother bakes. I will fix the pork chops the way my mother fixed the pork chops. Or me and Tony have this competition. She learned a new school way to make baked macaroni and cheese, but I make baked macaroni and cheese like mommy made it.
Yeah.
Right? So her kids love the way she makes it, but then she loves the way I make it because it
Right.
reminds her of mom. So now
Yeah.
you have new traditions. And so at Thanksgiving, you have her mac and cheese, which the kids love. You have my mac and cheese, which she loves and her husband loves because now we
Yeah.
have these new traditions.
Yeah.
And that is a part of that maturity piece that I'm speaking of.
Yeah.
Once we get to the point where we aren't avoiding the richness and the reality of who that person was, the beauty of who that person was that we loved, and then we're embracing the fact that, like you said, we did experience that love and it was real. Then now we can begin new traditions to move forward.
True.
We talk about it, right? We say their names. We remember uh, we have memories of the good times or times we've been corrected.
Yeah.
So now then when we speak of them, there it is.
Yeah.
They're present,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And all of that is very important. I think when we get beyond the anger of the loss, we can get into the beauty of the lived.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
No, it absolutely
And
does.
as you've said, it is a sweet harmony that happens.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it matures us and it makes us appreciative. And
Absolutely.
there is a whole that we're on the healing journey. And that
Yeah.
healing journey continues. Like it never ends.
Every single day.
I tell the story to my grandmother Lou. She she fixed raccoon. You know, we in the South, we in Darien, Georgia. They eat all kinds of crazy stuff. And this particular time we were down for Christmas, she they had brought in some raccoon and she skinning it and getting it prepared and all that kind of just disgusting stuff that I
A
don't really do
raccoon.
in our household.
Mhm.
Yeah, coon. So they eat coon and all kinds of everything down there.
Mhm.
She told me it was chicken.
Mhm.
She was like, "How does it taste?" I said, "It tastes like chicken." She said, "It is chicken."
Mhm.
Well, it's more like raccoon than chicken. I was like,
Mhm.
you know.
Mhm.
So I tell that story because that's my grandmother. She fixed everything. They had
Mhm.
preserves. It was like their food was just better because it was made with love.
Have you eaten raccoon since?
I will not.
Okay.
Thank you. Mm-mm.
Okay.
Nope.
No, it's
But
fine.
I tasted venison being out there.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
They invited me to eat alligator, gator. I don't want any gator.
I've
Y'all
had
right.
gator before.
Oh no, no, no. I'm not eating. I had duck. I don't really want duck either.
That's okay.
I mean, it's a long list of things that they have in the South and all of the seafood and stuff. I'm not trying all that. Y'all can have all of that. But
Mhm.
I love the fact that I can talk about her in that way because it's such a
Yeah.
sweet memory.
Yeah. Yeah. It is. God bless Black people in the South. God
Now
bless.
biscuits, those homemade biscuits. Ooh,
Right, right. Yeah, they could do that. They could do that. I'm gonna let you go. Thank you for hanging out with me. No, we could do
no
this. We've been
problem.
doing this.
Yeah,
Yeah, we've
I mean
been doing
this is
this for
fun.
decades now. So
This is
I'm
fun, but I also sense that this journey that you've been on, your love again journey, has also encouraged other people to reimagine themselves beyond the pain and into a place of healing, and
that's
that's
important.
why it's necessary. So I appreciate you inviting me.
Well, no, thank you. Thank you for coming on. I appreciate you sharing your story and your journey. Doing this has it wasn't contrived for me. I'm really interested in other people's journey and how they've processed things because I am still trying to process my life. And so you help me, you add to me in some ways, in a very specific ways. So thank you. I
You're
really,
welcome.
really appreciate this. Before you go, I got 5 quick questions for you.
Hey, let it roll.
Okay, you got this. You got this. Okay, so number one, do you believe in love at first sight?
Yes,
Okay. Um, what has love taught you?
to be strong and vulnerable at the same time.
Mhm, mhm. Okay, good. What do you know about love now that you didn't know then?
That's a good question. I think that love has levels. Love has levels. Love has how about just not to be fearful of it? Not to be afraid to love somebody
Mhm.
and also to love yourself.
Okay. Um, what makes a good lover?
Intimacy
Mhm.
makes a good lover.
Yeah.
Being ready to please someone
Mhm.
other than yourself. That's what I
Mhm.
mean. Romance, begins before the bed. It
All the
begins
things.
with the
All the things.
it's the thoughtfulness, it's the considering someone else. It's the uh, if gifting it's the preparation that goes into it. You
Mhm.
know, all of that. Yeah.
Gotcha. All right. Last question. What brings you joy?
Music, my nieces. I like watching movies.
You got a nephew, so you just gonna
And my nephew,
you just
yeah.
you just you gonna throw my
That brings
man
me
over
joy. Yeah,
the.
yeah. Those things make me happy. But a lot of times it's movies. A good meal makes me happy.
Mhm,
Great conversation makes me happy. Yeah, it brings
mhm,
me joy.
mhm,
Hmm.
mhm. Okay, that's good. Thank you.
You're
Um,
welcome. That was
I
a
want you all to connect with my friend Pastor LaShondra Stephens. She's an amazing woman. She's an amazing theologian and scholar. Um, you'll learn a lot um, from her. And so, if they wanted to reach out with you and connect with you on social media, where can they find you at?
Okay, so on Instagram and on Twitter, I'm LaShondra Leeds, and on Facebook, I'm just LaShondra Stephens.
Okay.
So hopefully, you guys will follow me and engage with me and laugh with me because I
Yeah,
like to keep my page funny.
absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you for doing this.
You're welcome.
Um,
I forgot to say I love snow.
Gotcha. Well, you can have all of it. You have all of that. But no,
Yeah.
let me say this before I let you go. I am extremely proud of you. Um, I am extremely impressed with it. It's not impressed because I didn't what you've done. I didn't know you were doing. You were smarter than us when we were kids. So I mean, it's not, of course, but for what you have done, for what you put your hands to do, just amazing to me, and
Thank you.
it has added so much value. You have added so much value to my life, and so I love you very much,
Oh, I love
and
you
I
too.
thank you for
It's
being
mutual.
a friend all of these years. And you have to come back and do this
Yes.
with me.
Just let me know. I'll be there.
Thank you for your time. Thank you, everybody.
Always.
Next week is a holiday, so we won't have a show next week,
Yay.
but we'll be back after that. Give me a minute because I got finals coming up, and
Mm,
I just I'm going to need a minute. So
you got
I'll let you know. We'll let you know how things. But take care of each other. Take care of yourselves, and have a great Thanksgiving holiday. All right.
happy
Bye bye.
Thanksgiving. Bye.